What is good? We're back. We're going to run through the top 24 Dynasty running back rankings. We're going to tier them up for your pleasure, but we're also going to add in kind of where your 2026 rookie picks will start to factor in here. Now, again, it's early, and I think generally a lot of people in this draft class right now are saying, high-end, top-end stuff, and then through the bottom two-thirds or half, not quite as strong. And this was all cyclical and it'll all change, and people will either get way more charged up about these picks or really confirmation bias that this class really does stink. So we're going to run through these rankings and tiers and add in kind of our first look at where we might slot in some draft picks. So let's get going. We got tier 1, we got Bijan, Gibbs, and we got Achane in this tier. And is Gibbs at 1? Hey, you keep feeding Gibbs the workload that we've been seeing. I think he absolutely could. I'm completely fine with him getting the 12 to 15 carries we've seen over the last 3 weeks. If you're going to see that 12 and 7 targets, and then when we didn't see that, we saw 20 attempts. So if that's the case, he's probably RB1. He's absolutely a stud. We know that about pretty much all three of these guys at this point. But, Gibbs looks awfully warranted to that high-end pick the Lions made. So maybe some apologies in order finally, and we could get off don't draft running backs high. It's like, maybe every once in a while you can. So good for the Lions, good for Gibbs. And then Achane's in this group. At this point, I think Achane's undeniable. Made the jump back up to 20 points per game. Great back, handled the load. Obviously, this last week we saw him get hurt, but he's into his third season and he's answered any questions I think you could possibly have about him. It seems like the head coach is kind of surging at the end here of the season and most likely survive another season. So I think that's great news for Achane because he's kind of the straw that stirs the drink there in that Miami offense, right? So as far as the player, as far as the rookie picks go, I wouldn't be really trading the 1-1 for any of these picks. So tier 1 kind of sits by itself, right? In tier 2, right, we jump in. We've got Jeanty, we've got Taylor, we've got James Cook, we've got Breece Hall, right? And so we'll talk about where the rookie pick maybe slots in after we talk about these guys. Jeanty sits right outside the tier 1 group, but I think he could easily jump back into that tier 1 as time goes on. Life just really stinks in Vegas. JT only in tier 2 right now because he's a hair older, 26. He'll be 27 going into the next season. Really the only reason why I don't have him in tier 1, just age in Dynasty, a little bit of a factor, of course. And then James Cook having the best season, right? Looks absolutely great. Already over his career rushing high. Could very well see the 23 reception total at 44. Could go over that, right? He's at 29 right now. Either way, going to be close. Will he ever go over 16 TDs again? I don't know. Probably not. But with his usage and the way he's playing, all at all-time highs, he looks great. He's a big part of this offense. I mentioned it about Achane. Like James Cook, huge part of how this offense kind of operates. And now I know everyone is not going to like these ranks as far as where I have Breece here, but they're my ranks. So boo-boo, stick your head in doo-doo. I'm keeping Breece here. Much like Jeanty, I think life just sucks for Breece right now. But what I do know about Breece is I've seen him be one of the better running backs in the league throughout stretches, even though having an absolutely situation. He's absolutely one of the better receiving running backs in the league, and I think he should absolutely be some team's workhorse. And for all those reasons, I'm keeping him here. Just for a second here, just remember that people turned their back on Saquon at the end of his tenure with the Giants, right? Like overrated, stinks, can't stay healthy, all these things. Goes to the Eagles and rushes for, 2,000 yards, right? A lot of people thought Josh Jacobs was cooked with the Raiders, right? Perennially crapped on, and then, goes to Green Bay and has been, the workhorse for them. David Montgomery with the Bears, right? We fought that battle for a long time. He goes over to Detroit, looks great. If Gibbs never comes to town, we could be looking at David Montgomery in a completely different light. But whenever he gets the opportunity, he's good. Spots of Jonathan Taylor's career, right? Whether it was injury or the team not being great in stretches. And now JT has carried teams and rewarded teams for patience here over the end of last season into this season, right? Travis Etienne, just last year, people threw him away for dead because the Jags situation just continued to get worse and eroded. And now the situation isn't nearly as bad. And Etienne looks like a good player again. And, Chase Brown every year. Just kidding. I know you guys hate Chase Brown and we love him. So here we are. But at the end of the day, Breece was still RB15, is still RB15 this season. Things could change as we still have 4 games left. But I think a change of scenery is going to bring him back to Dynasty running back glory. If you want to push him down to the next tier below, that's fine. I'm going to remain high on him. I understand if you like Hampton, Henderson, Judkins, Bucky, they're certainly much more fun right now. I get it, right? But for me, I'm sticking with a guy who I have a lot of confidence in, and Breece Hall, kind of rounds this tier out. I think in this tier you can entertain the 1-1, right? This is which is widely regarded as Jeremiah Love right now, super flex, however you want to chop it up. It's early in the process, of course. But if you wanted to say I'll swap him for JT, who again is a little older, or Cook, because he just sort of jumped up into this tier. And I think everybody listening right now is, after I just gave that little soliloquy on Breece, is like, I'm absolutely swapping Love for Breece. Hey, I get it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do that either. But this is kind of where I would place that pick currently, the 1-1 right around in this area. Now, with Jeanty, I would still say that I'm keeping Jeanty over the 101 right now, which is why I kind of led that off with he's fringe right outside of there. I believe in the talent. I just think it's really, really stinky right now for him. So I think it's kind of even whether or not you like. I think a lot of people would just take Love right now because they don't have any patience and Mountain West and yada, 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 which again, I'm not necessarily going to argue with you. I think Jeremiah Love's awesome. And again, we'll as we get further and further into this process, maybe that tide turns for me. So let's jump into tier 3, right? This is mostly rookies at a Bucky, right? It's Hampton, Bucky, Henderson, Judkins. I've liked what I've seen out of all those guys. So as of now, I would probably keep them all over the 1-2 for the most part. That's guys like Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, maybe Mendoza, possibly higher register. His play with all eyes on him was great and a lot of buzz after that Big Ten championship, but we know how that can kind of ebb and flow. If you remember Penix versus Texas was, oh my God, how good is this guy? And then after Michigan, pretty much out on him, and that's just kind of how this process goes. You get an island game, big situations. Mendoza could be like, oh, super flex. He's the 1-2 because, he won the national championship and was great all through that run and would be huge for him. So that's kind of why I mentioned him here. Now, I'm sure some have a guy or two in that tier that they would maybe remove. I have a suspicion that maybe for a Tate or a Tyson or whomever you really like there, you may say, hey, I want to get rid of, I would trade them for Judkins. Hey, maybe Bucky Irving because I'm a draft capital queen. And, he's a 4th or a 5th round pick or whatever he was. I'll take this guy who's surely going to have better draft capital than he was. For me, I'm probably sticking with most of them, but I understand like this is kind of where that 1-2 would slot in for me, sort of right now, right? And so that would be like the 1-2, sort of through the 1-4-ish, kind of slotting in here. And again, over the next month or 3, we'll go through this process and we'll tighten this up as we go. But hey, I know a lot of people's seasons just ended. We're looking towards the future, right? Because only half the league can get in, and some of y'all know that hey, I shouldn't even gotten in. So we're starting to look through the future. So this is why I'm trying to present this, right now and start to give you an early feeling on how things. But you got to be flexible with everything. So let's get into tier 4. Underdog just dropped prediction markets, spreads, totals, and team outcomes. And the best part, you can combine them with player picks for bigger multipliers. Sign up today with code FFDYNASTY and make a $5 fantasy entry to get $100 in fantasy bonus entries. Prediction markets are now live in 25 states, including Texas, California, and Florida. And Underdog is available in over 40 states with player picks and draft games. Prediction markets, player picks, all on Underdog. I think this is where the bullets fly a bit more. This is that kind of older group. We got Jacobs, we got Barkley, Kyron, not necessarily as old as those guys. And then we have CMC, which I don't really know where to rank CMC. Like, is he going to put up another season like this? I don't know. I think Barkley has another season like akin to the one we saw last year, not this one. Jacobs has been, rock steady. And Kyron has Corum looming a little bit, but they did pay him and, still a very solid player. do I think you could trade, like I said, any of those like top 4 picks for these guys right now? No, probably not. You'd probably have to add something to do that. I would slot kind of those in here if you could get them, right? But it's the old year early or year late, and maybe you're a year late on Barkley, but last year CMC you thought you were a year late on, and he bounced back, and now carrying teams to the playoffs. So that's kind of things how things work. But again, 1, 2 through 1, 6, just to put a number on it, are in play here. Not saying that's what you would get, just for the exercise purposes. And again, that may extend to 1, 8 and 1, 12 possibly once we get more familiar with this class. It could end up being in the same boat as most people saying, top half of the first is good, and there's a lot of questions sort of after, right? So, probably more realistically, it's 8 to 12 on those guys. And I could, and that really just depends on where you are as a team and the cards that team holds. And is it a really old team? Is it a mix of young and old? And maybe I could swap this out for a younger guy and a new lottery ticket with those later round firsts here for these old stalwarts who are, perennially just really, really solid assets for your fantasy team. That's kind of where this group kind of ends for me. So let's jump into tier 5 here, right? Now, this is a tier where I think most people would absolutely say, get rid of, these guys for any first that you can get. And for me, this is Chase Brown, this is Javonte, and this is Travis Etienne. The reason I have those guys grouped here, and maybe you could throw Skatt in here, and maybe you throw Harvey in here by the time the season's over, right? But for those 3 players right now, Brown, Javonte, Et, I feel confident in them being solid running backs for a few more years, which is, again, why I sort of group those guys together in this situation, right? Now, again, I'm not going to lie. I personally don't want to trade these guys for the low end first. And I know the general sentiment would be take 108 through 112 and re-roll. And again, maybe I come to the same conclusion when we proceed down the road here for the prospects and we get to the breakdowns and see what these player situations, E.T., Williams, and Chase Brown kind of look like running up to free agency, running up through the draft could completely change. And maybe you're a little late by then. But again, I feel confident with all those guys having a home, having a lead back role, and being able to put up points for your fantasy team. So I think you can slot 8 through 12 in this area here. For me personally, for the most part, I would kind of shy away. Now, again, if there's quarterbacks here that end up slotting in here that you like, or you need a different position to need, or you feel really good. Let's say Jonah Coleman, kind of falls down here, or Justice Haynes. Maybe you want to swap those out for those kind of guys. And then I don't know who's going back to school, who isn't. I know I like Concepcion. I'm sure, I don't know where he quite lies. I would say probably end of the first right now. Depending on where my team is, maybe I do swap him out for a guy like a Concepcion, because that guy's a lot of fun. But I think these guys are all, very, very solid running backs. Got them grouped here in tier 5. Moving on to tier 6. Like I said, Skattebo, Harvey lead this one off. Skattebo's healthy right now. He's up in the next tier, or maybe even in the Hampton, Henderson, Judkins tier at this point. But the reason that I have Skattebo kind of here is because we don't know how he's going to come back from an injury. Now, it could zap some of the juice that he had, and it really hurt him, or because he wasn't like a guy who relies on speed and quickness to kind of do what he's does. It doesn't matter at all. I tend to think he's going to come back and be just fine. And probably be a big jumper. And Harvey, just came off a nice performance yesterday with Denver. Let's see how he closes out this at the rest of the year. But both of those guys, I think, could easily be up tiers. But for right now, I've kind of got them holding down tier 6. And then I have Swift and Walker in this tier, because really after this Skattebo and Harvey, I think things get awfully wonky with a lot of these running back rankings. So we're like down to 20 here. I have Swift in here because I just, he's got another year with Ben Johnson. And if he's going to be with Ben, I think he's earned some more respect on his name and earned what he can be as this offense improves. I don't know where they're going to be with the running back. Maybe they bring in a Breece and it nullifies all this. And you probably should sell Swift if you could get anything for that 8 through 12 range for him as a first round pick. Right. And I don't know that that's necessarily what you can get right now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's kind of, where I would slot him. I don't want to sell Swift for a 2. I'm just going to ride that out for another year and see how it goes. See if in season something happens or he's useful to me, because, we play the player value thing, but there's also the part where you need guys to win championships, and Swift could be a big part of that. Right. And lastly, in this tier, we have Kenny Walker, and I don't know what to do with Kenny. I like Kenny. I think Kenny's really good. When you see Kenny out there operating, you're like, damn, that's awesome. Kind of in the Breece spectrum where, life doesn't stink for the situation that you're in as far as where your team is and the offense, but your usage splitting with Sharps and those other things maybe are holding Kenny back. And if Kenny could be healthy and get to a team where he is the 1A every week and gets the opportunity, I think, he's one of the more talented players. So I do leave him in this tier 6 here, but I get it. If you're like, I don't want anything to do with that guy, he's dead to me. Completely understand. I'm going to give Kenny one more whirl. He's going to get a new contract in a new place. I think that could be huge for him, kind of moving forward. So that's going to wrap up tier 6. And then, tier 7, we've got Tre Benson, Rico Dowdle, Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, right? Derrick Henry's only there because he's about to be like 32 years old, right? How long can this guy play? Maybe till he's 40. I have no idea. And it's no indictment on that. I think Henry's, I just don't know where to rank him. So kind of got him down here a little lower. Just age is could say it's just a number, but in the world, Father Time is undefeated. So eventually we'll see a little hiccup in Henry's giddy up, right? And so Montgomery, same thing. Like I don't know really what to do with him. I don't know what the plight of him is. I think if he can get opportunity, he's probably up a tier in the rankings, but I don't really know how that's going to play out for Detroit and for him for the remainder of his contract here. I believe he's 28 years old. And then the top 2 in this tier, Benson, unfortunately, we haven't gotten to see anything. So this is just a kind of peeing in the wind situation. It could be great. It could be terrible. But for now, I think there's opportunity for him to be the guy in Arizona. They've got capital on him. Unfortunately, he got hurt at the wrong time. And, that could end up costing him next year a greater opportunity that he could have earned this year. There's kind of weird stuff going on right now. Maybe we'll open it up and see him next week. Maybe not. And it's just, maybe he gets pushed down the rankings further. And then I feel like Rico Dowdle, older, but has earned the right to potentially be a workhorse running back somewhere else on another contract elsewhere. Every time he gets an opportunity, whether it was with Dallas or the Panthers to be the guy, he's been good. So I think he kind of needed to be in that top 24 mix for me. He's up 32 spots, obviously, from kind of where we had him preseason. So, all those guys, I think either can have an opportunity and be awesome with like a Benson, or if Rico, Henry, or Montgomery get an opportunity, I think they'll do really well with it. Or Henry obviously is getting opportunity, but older. And again, like after that 20 range, it's a bit of a mess. So we can round this out with kind of the top 30, because these are the last guys that I even remotely have any clue what to do with. At RB 27, kicking off tier 8, we got Chuba, then we got Woody Marks, we got Jaylen Warren, and we have Sharps. So that's your top 30. Chuba's climbing these, climbing up the mountain with an ice pick and some climbing shoes. He's the yodeler. He's just climbing back up there. Looked explosive, looks good. We got 4 more games to close out the season. Chuba could be huge in those games and be 2 more tiers up, kind of where he was when we started the season, thinking, hey, he's one of the last running backs you can get who has workhorse and RB1 production value. And right now, we've taken a hit on that, but it's starting to kind of come back around. Woody Marks has gotten a ton of opportunity. Has it been necessarily awesome? No. I think some things we've seen from Woody have been good. I think their offensive line is very bad, which doesn't help the opportunities that Woody Marks getting to be efficient with. We know he's an excellent pass catcher. I think regardless, he's going to have an opportunity next year to kind of maybe even be, like what we saw Jaylen Warren be early in his career for Pittsburgh, even if, Houston brings in another bigger bodied back to kind of bang around a little more than Woody. I mean, not that Woody's like super duper small. Warren having a good season. Can't, again, there's a mess of running backs below all these guys, like your Pollards and Connors and Alvin Kamaras and Tracy's, and then backups as, the Tutons of the world, and Brian Robinson and Rashad White, Monungai, Algier, all good players, but probably stuck in a 2 or 3 role, kind of moving forward until, hey, Tuton could be up here in a matter of months here, and is floating right under the 30 mark here, but. Sharb's probably going to get an opportunity to be the guy next year, maybe. But me and Alex, the producer who's producing the show right now, we're talking beforehand, and it's like there's no good market for Sharbs because you feel like you're selling too cheap, and you can't buy. What you're buying him for almost doesn't really make sense. So, like, these are a bunch of guys right now whose second round picks are in play for, but. I don't have a strong conviction on how things are going to be for them next year necessarily, but a whole lot of upside, I think, for all of them. So let me know what's going on in the comments, what I got wrong, what you vehemently disagree with, what I'm an idiot, what you like about it. Tell me about who you like in the first round and where you would slot those guys in. And, let me know how your seasons went, man. And if we've helped you out or not. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Come over to the free Discord. If you haven't checked it out, there's a $5 holler as well, a paid Discord, paid Patreon, where you get extra episodes every month. You get access to, rankings and when the ADP's back. And we've got a really cool thing right now in the works that we've launched to the Patreon members. We're going to launch to the free Discord members, and pretty soon it'll be out to the public. And we have so many things that we can do with it. So we're really, really excited to show that to you. In the coming weeks. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for spending this fantasy season with us. And I hope to see you all in the off season while we can go through this cycle again. And hopefully, Caleb Johnson not in the mix here. Hopefully, we don't have any more misses like Caleb Johnson, although we haven't seen him. I'm not out on him. We just haven't seen him. I think kind of the mix of things. I read that situation wrong. So, definitely a big miss from last year, but hopefully you guys can forgive me and we can take this ride one more time. All right, I'm out. Peace.